Hello and welcome back to Sharks Happen. I'm your host Hal and my co-host Jackson. We're going to go over shark attacks, one of them on a surfer, one of them on a boogie boarder. We're going to go over one on a diver. We're going to have 4 attacks because we're going to cover what happened before an attack we covered that I glossed over, but I found actually what these two had said this shark did, a great white shark, just before a fatal attack on another person the next day. And it's just a fascinating story, so we'll go over that. We'll finish off with what were you thinking? And then I'll have an update on what's been going on and a little discussion about Janice, I believe it is. A viewer sent me a video, actually some picture clips from a video, and they're just amazing. So we'll go over all of that. It's going to be a really good show. I hope you stick around. Okay, we'll start out the show. We're going to head over to Anaola, and that is over in Kauai, Hawaii. The date on this attack is June 29th of 1989. Anthony Paden doesn't tell you the date, time and day, but it does tell you he is 20 feet from shore, so about 6 meters from shore, and he is just taking a wave in and falls off his board. So I would assume that there's, wave action and blurred waters right where he fell off of his board. It doesn't say that he fell on a shark, but it does say a shark bit his foot when he fell off the board, and 20 feet from shore. Even in Hawaii, I would imagine that's probably knee deep, maybe at best, maybe a little bit more thigh deep, but it's got to be pretty shallow water. And the shark ended up biting him in the foot. He had to go in. He ended up with severe foot damage, tissue removal from the foot, and partially torn Achilles tendon on that. So hopefully he's a young guy, because they don't say what age he is, but usually, these are younger people that end up with these surfing incidents, and the younger you are, the faster and more you can heal up from this. And that's some pretty major damage to a pretty important part of your body, and you don't want to have to go through life with, if that happened to me at this age, well, it probably wouldn't heal all the way because of how old I am, is what I'm saying. So an attack, not an attempt to predate. We don't know what size the shark is. It could be, too small for our stats, and it could be just about any kind of shark. I mean, you're in shallow water there, but most likely it's a Hawaii tiger shark. And in that case, 4 or 5 footer biting your foot could do a lot of damage and remove a lot of tissue, and could remove the foot if it wanted to. So that's an attack, not an attempt to predate. I'm hesitant to put this one into the stats because usually they'll give you a size on the shark, and we don't have that, meaning they probably didn't have anything to go off of as far as radius. There's not enough room to get a bite radius. And then if you don't have any tooth fragments and nobody witnessed the attack, which it sounds like nobody saw it, you're not going to know what size shark. And I would, this is probably most likely a smaller shark than normal, and there's no way to tell, and I'm not going to put it into the stats without knowing that for sure. So I'll put it aside, and if we ever find out that this shark was bigger than 6 feet or bigger, we'll put it in the stats. We'll move on. We're going to head over to Haifa, Israel. We're going to go right off of the coast where the Hadera power plant is. And sounds like 3 gentlemen were down in the water diving. The water was murky. The power plant keeps the water because it takes in water for cooling, and it probably kicks out the water that went through the system to cool the system, and that water heats up as it goes through the system, cooling the system, and it probably kicks out into the ocean, and that warms up the water there. And they're saying that dusky sharks and sandbar sharks, warm weather sharks, are flocking there during the winter and keep them warm around there. So the 3 of them are in the water, and it's murky water, which you would imagine if it's got water being sucked in and kicked back out after going through a system and doing the heating cooling system. Well, this gentleman was diving with them. Doesn't say the time of day, just depth of water, but does say it was murky water, and he was in about 30 feet from shore, heading back to shore. He said he got about 10 yards away from his friends. So he's separated from his two friends a little bit, and he's heading to shore, and a shark suddenly grabs onto his swim fin. And he says it starts shaking vigorously. It did the death shake. And he said, yeah, the one thing is how powerful it was. And a dusky shark or a sandbar shark, they get up to 11 feet, 11, 12 feet, I think. So even a 9, 8 footer, they're powerful. They're all muscle. Sharks are pretty much all muscle, so they're powerful. And even a smaller one shaking you like that. Luckily, it didn't get his foot; just got his swim fin, the Hanan Shaul. So he gets out. Luckily on this one, he gets out with an attack, not an attempt to predate. Swim fin bitten and ripped off of his foot. Sounds like he retrieved it. That would be a nice souvenir and show people that you were bitten by a shark, and without having any injury from it. So that's the best part about it. And most likely, like they said, dusky or the sandbar that's around there, and they will bite something that's flipping around in the area. That's what they do, sharks. So like I said, he just gets out lucky that he doesn't end up with any wounds on us. We had another attack that we had covered, and I'm not sure that it was an attack, but it was at another power plant, and again the water was heated up in that area. It was murky there, and they had to run him with it, and I don't think there was any bite at all in that one, but it's surprising that these sharks are using the power plant heated waters to keep warm in the winter, and that sounds like what's happening over in Haifa, Israel. That's the attack on Hanan and Shaul, and we'll move on. Okay, now we're going to head over to East Beach, that is over in South Africa, and the date on this attack is July 10th of 2019. Dusty Phelan, 20 years old, he's out doing some surfing. It sounds like he's laying on his board, 10:30 in the morning, doesn't say the distance from shore or depth of water, and he's laying there, and a shark came up and bit his leg. And shark released him, swam off a bit, turned around, came back and bit his legs again. I think it got both of his legs when it bit him one of the times, because both of his legs are kind of bandaged up as he's laying in the hospital. So it's possible one of the bites got both of the legs and the second bite got one of the legs, or both of them got both of the legs, but both of his legs are bandaged up. The shark bit him twice, two separate times, leaving and coming back, and then swimming off again. He actually walked himself, so walked ashore and walked to the ambulance that took him in to get sewn up. So just an incredible thing that you can walk after you've been bit twice by what they say is a juvenile great white shark. I'm interested to know the size of it. It's at least 6 feet. I mean, I don't think we've gone over anything as a shark under 4 feet. I mean, under 6 feet with the great white. They're almost 4 feet when they're born. So probably the first year they're 5 feet or bigger. So by year 2, they fit into our stats, is what I'm thinking with the great white. And like I said, at the end of the show, we're going to go over some information on the great white that, if true, it's amazing. So Dusty Phelan gets out of there, an attack, not an attempt to predate, a very pissed shark, if you want to call it that bit him once, swam off, and came back and bit him again. Now, it's just shocking that these sharks do that, and normally when they're doing that, they're not removing any flesh. We've covered so many of these sharks that have bitten, swam off ways, came back and bit him again. And one of the most amazing that I got to find again is that great white that came up to the one guy and kind of like a bully, bumped him in the chest, bit one of his arms, bumped him in the chest again, bit his other arm. I think he got bit 3 times in that situation, but it wasn't to remove flesh. The shark wanted him out of the area. Some of these stories just are amazing with that. So I think that's what happened with Dusty, and he's able to walk right out of the water. So an attack, not an attempt to predate, great white shark, over 6 feet. We just don't know how big. That's how it'll go in the stats. We'll move on. Okay, we're going to finish off our unprovoked attacks. We're going to head over off of Cape Kiwanda. That's over in Oregon. The date on this attack is September 21st of 2002. Garry Turner, he is 24 years old. He and a friend are out doing some boogie boarding. They don't say the time of the day or the depth of water, but he is sitting talking to his friend 200 feet from shore, so about 60 meters from shore, sitting there talking, waiting on a wave, whatever, and suddenly he feels something grab. Now, they wear swim fins. He's got swim fins on, and he feels something bite his foot. He doesn't know he's been bitten in the foot, but he feels something grab him and pull him down. And it actually pulls him off of his boogie board. And he says he didn't know what it was, so all he thought to do was take his other swim fin and kick the son of a bitch. Well, it lets go of him, and he climbs back on his board, and him and his friends are sitting there, and suddenly one of them starts yelling, "Shark, it's a shark." And they said that the shark kind of curled around and came up and lunged out of the water. Not a full breach, but that the body seemed to lunge out of the water. And I don't know if it was going after Garry again, but he did say that he noticed it was a shark when it was falling back into the water and he could see the gill slits. So they did get a size on the shark. They don't know what type of shark this was. They all went in. Shark left them alone after that. But he did get bitten in the foot, down to the bone, but didn't get any tendons or, luckily, you know, do the flesh removal, it sounds like, that happened with our earlier victim that we went over. So he should recover fine. And he goes in and has to have that sewn up, but it was to the bone. It was a deep, hard bite, and you know he has the swim fin on there, and that's, you know, probably a good 1/8-inch thick rubber, which is nothing to a shark, but I mean to us that's pretty thick. I mean you wouldn't be thinking about some shark 8 foot biting through your foot, and that's what the witnesses said. This was an 8-foot shark that ended up biting Garry in the foot, tugging him down into the water, and then when he kicked himself free, it kind of came to the top of the water. It sounds like it took a lunge, maybe just at the group. So that's how that's going to go down. Attack, not an attempt to predate, another territorial bite. Don't know what type of shark. We just know it's about 8 feet, and that's how it'll go down. Stick around. We're going to get into a couple of divers situation they had with a great white shark the day prior to a fatality over in one of those places you don't want to run into a great white, which, you know, there's a few of them off the top of my head, like New Zealand, Australia, and South Africa. So stick around, we'll be right back. Okay, we're going to finish out our show as far as attacks that we're going to cover. We're going to talk about an encounter, not really an attack, but an encounter these two divers had. These two gentlemen, Wade Cleary and Danny Smith, had this run-in with this great white shark the day before Damian Johnson ended up with a fatal attack about a mile from where they were out to sea the next day, 18 hours later. I covered Damian Johnson's attack, and in doing so explained that these two divers had a run-in with the shark beforehand, and I think there was other people that had a run-in with it before. But this is their account. It took place on Friday, July 15th, is that right? Yeah, Friday, July 24th of 2015. So the next day, July 25th, Damian Johnson in 2015 ended up fatally attacked. Well, this is the day before. And Wade Cleary and Danny Smith are out and they're diving for scallops. They're diving on hookah. One of them, I don't know which one, is wearing a buoyancy compensator, and the other one isn't. They're pretty much in dive suits. One of them has, you know, shorter, you know, like shorts dive suit on or whatever, but one's got a buoyancy compensator on, the other one doesn't, and they're both on hookah, which is lines of air going down to them. They left to go out there. This is in Booming Bay, and they're at Maria Island, and there's 35 knot winds. So they get out there at 2:30 and they do a few dives, and when they're not seeing any scallops, they move. You don't just sit there. Scallops aren't going to come around. They're not going to swim by. You have to go find them. So they move every time they can't find them, and they had moved multiple times, and now it's about 4:30 and they get themselves by Maria Island, and they had moved up from 12 fathoms to 8 fathoms. So they went into shallower water. They were in 12 fathoms, you're talking about 76 feet, 72 feet of water, and they moved up to about 25 feet of water, 8 fathoms deep. So now they're sitting there, and actually it's 50 feet of water, but this incident happens about 8 fathoms, 8 meters from the surface, and it's almost dusk. They're on the scallops. There's this heavy wind that's blowing 35 knots. So they can't even get their anchor, which is very long, that it won't grab and it keeps dragging. So they decide they have to live drift, which means they're gonna go and jump out of the boat on the other side and drift over their scallop spot. The boat's going to too, and the boat's gonna have to return to them every time when they drift out of the area to pick up the scallops, and they'll take them back over there. And this is what they keep repeating doing. They said they did it 7 times. So they did this 7 times, and it sounds like it's dusk now. It's right before dark. It's like 5:30, and they're going in the 8th time. They go in the 8th time, and this is Wade Cleary now. This is Danny Smith that's in the water now. He's down in the water. He's quite a ways from the boat. He says he likes to come up right at the boat. He likes to, underwater, he likes to go to the boat and then go up. He's heard too many times that sharks end up getting you when you're at the top of the water. He says, but his buddy Wade Cleary, he just pops right up and waits for the boat to come and get him, or he goes back to the boat. So they both do their own thing. Well, he's down in the water. He's got a full basket, a full little bag of his scallops, and he's headed up. And he says he gets about 8 meters from the surface, so you're about 25 feet down. And he says they have about 14-foot visibility. And he says, but this shark was 1 meter from him. He says what happened was he was swimming up to the surface, and he's just thinking to himself, Wade's probably already at the surface with a full bag too, because they're on the scallops. And he gets a tap on his shoulder. He says it was like a human tap on your shoulder. He says, but when he turned, he knew exactly what it was, and it was about a 15-foot great white shark, a female. And the tap, he said, must have been from its dorsal, its pectoral fin, the side fin, this thing as it went by. And he says it stayed about 1 meter from him. You're talking 3.5 feet. He said he could have pet the thing as it did these swimming by him, and it would swim in front of him. And he had to make up his mind whether to go up or whether to go down. And he knows that going up is a dangerous thing, but that's what he decided to do. And he went up, it sounds like on an angle, and ended up right at the boat. And he says that shark kept circling him tightly within a meter or two until he got to about 1 meter from the boat, and then the shark disappeared. He gets up on the boat and he starts, there's 2 young gentlemen that are like probably working the air, making sure that they're safe when they're in the water. He starts asking where's Wade. He says he popped up behind the boat about 100 yards a little bit ago. So he says, get them in. There's a great white shark in the water. So Danny Smith says, I wasn't thinking that we should have just taken the boat and backed it up to him. Instead, they grabbed his air hose and started tugging him across the water at a high rate of speed. And Wade says I was vertical in the water, and then they started pulling me, and I was kind of on an angle. So he's being pulled on an angle, but that's like a lure in the water. And sure enough, at first, Wade Cleary thought that he had been hit by a wave. He knew that there was waves. It sounds like there was a lot of waves, and he knew that a wave was coming. And it sounds like he thought he was hit by a wave, but he was actually hit by the shark. The shark came up. They're pulling on his thing, and they say right when they saw the fins pop up behind Wade Cleary, they stopped pulling. So they're pulling him. They saw the fins pop up behind him. They stopped pulling so he doesn't look like the thing. But it's too late. The shark had already hit him and rolled him. And when they say rolled, that means spinned his body and not flipped him. But he's laying there like this, and he just rolls a 360 sideways. Because he says when it rolled him around and his face re-entered the water, he could see the shark swimming down to the seafloor. After it bumped him. And he says, you know, it felt like a truck. He says, I don't know if it was the fin or the head of the shark that hit me, but it felt like a truck. And the friends were just freaking out. They get him to the boat. They drag him the rest of the way to the boat, and now they're trying to get him up onto the boat frantically. I mean, this great white is still in the area. His scallop bag is stuck on the ladder. So it takes them a little bit. They finally get that sorted out. They get him, no sooner do they get him up on the boat that shark returns, and they said it kind of turned on its back and looked at them, kind of checking them out before it swam off. One of the crazy things is what they said about the shark. They said it was so pale that it looked like a white shark, all white. They said the separation of colors was almost non-existent. And they say the researchers say that it could be such a faint gray that it looked like it was all white. So that's the one thing they said. But the other thing is that they were saying, well, yeah, this shark was, both of them said that the shark was not acting any different than curious, especially the first one that ran into it, Danny Smith, and swam his way up to the surface with the shark following him. The shark didn't, just acted curious, and he gets up to the boat. Well, the thing is, the researchers and everybody came to the conclusion they think that's the same shark because it was so close. But that doesn't fit what I think great whites attack and eat people for, that they have to be desperate sharks. If that shark was desperate the next day, it was desperate that day, and it's not going to go ahead and eat them. But just an amazing story to where the one has this great white shark, and it's a monster, and he says that it, so as it was circling him, and obviously, you know how they turn and they look at you kind of down at you, it turned because he said that it was a female, which means he sees no claspers. It's really easy to tell a shark's, you know, sex as long as they turn on their side. You can tell. So that sounds like what it did there, and the thing was so close to him. Like I said, he said he could pet it. He ends up getting back to the boat, and then they drag their buddy like a lure, and they see the shark fins pop up. Could you imagine pulling your buddy and you see shark fins, large shark fins pop up behind it? Oh, it's got to be a nightmare. And then you see him rolled. You know he was hit by the shark. You're probably thinking he was bitten. I mean, that's what I would think. The whole time I'm going into this, I'm like, this guy's going to get bitten. And it didn't end up biting him. And I had said that they had this run-in with the shark, but I didn't know it was this dramatic. I mean, that's just crazy to run into the shark like that. And like I said, they were in and out of the water 7 times. It was on number 8 dive that this ended up happening with the 2 of them. And I say the chances of that being the same shark that ate the person or attacked a person with the fatal attack a mile away is pretty much nothing. That doesn't sound like a desperate shark to me. I don't see why it would go ahead and do that unless it was totally territorial. And I believe, if I remember correctly, Damian Johnson, we have him down as a attempt and a predation, basically. They didn't recover remains, but he was pretty bitten up, if I remember correctly. I'll have to look back into that. So that's the story of Wade Cleary and Danny Smith and their encounter with the shark the day before, doing their diving for scallops, and that's the show for today. We're going to get into what were you thinking? We're going to talk about these photos that popped up, and I might even put them in a video. They are so cool, which I normally don't do, which maybe I won't, but we'll talk about whether they're real or not and what it means if they are real, and if they are real, why didn't we know about this earlier? So stick around, we're not done yet. Okay. Well, we'll start this out real quick with what were you thinking? Where was this at? Solana Beach, California, back in August 29th of 1962. Knox Harris, he's 39 years old, and he's in the water doing some scallop collecting. You know, you take a bar and you pry these things up and you take them up there and you have yourself a feast. Well, he's down there doing this, and a 4-foot horn shark, and I think I have a picture of one. I don't have a video, but I'll put up the picture. I'll look if I have a video, but here's a pic of a horn shark. A 4-footer swam by him, and he took his bar for abalone and whacked it in the tail, and it turned around and bit him in the chest. So he probably had to go in and get some stitches. So, you know, that's what were you thinking? Why'd you have to hit the shark? It was going on its way, it sounds like. Yeah, it just makes no sense to me why people do the things they do with wild animals. If you saw a bear in the woods, would you go up and smack it around? So that's the what were you thinking, and we're going to get into the talk of the great white shark's new revelation next. Okay, we're going to finish out the show. We're going to talk about these pictures I was sent from Janice, one of our viewers. These are amazing. She says, did you see the eye inside of an eye of a great white? Inside of one of these bad boys. Oh, what? So I click on this photo, and it is a very close-up of a great white shark's eye. And it's a video. But these screenshots are from the video, and the clips show that there's an eyeball inside of this eye, and it almost looks like you can see it here. But it's definitely separated. It's smaller than the eye, but it's still big. And you can see it kind of look up because they take a video, they take a film from above it, and you can see the eye looking up at it. You can see the eye looking over at it. And first of all, this is amazing. And I'll put one up on this video for a couple seconds here so that you can see how crazy this looks. But if that's the case, if there's an eye inside of an eye, first of all, why do we know these things change colors minutely, but we don't know they have an eye inside of an eye? Second of all, that would go along with what we all think about great whites, that they can see better than almost any fish in the water. And if that's true, that effect with an eye inside of an eye, it would be like having your goggles on underwater for the shark. Without any of that extra, you know how they have the rim and stuff and it's heavier plastic and you can't see through it? This guy would have that view everywhere under the water. And he would see more fuzzily when he pops his head out of the water, but he can still see, which we've all done, popping our head out of the water with the mask on. You can see around. It ain't the clearest thing, but you can notice that people are here and see that they're people. These guys can see. Now, that makes me worry, are these pictures real? Because how did we go this long with all the cage diving, with all the photos? It makes me think that there's no way this picture is real. That they didn't find this out earlier if there's an eye inside of there. And like I said, it is a trip what it looks like. So are we being punked? Did somebody doctor video? Or are we just finding out things that we should know about these guys already? By people that are just paying a little more attention than the people that get the tax dollars from us to tell us this kind of stuff. It makes no sense to me. So that was just a crazy thing. I'm like, holy smokes. That would mean that they can see like nothing underwater. They can see everything under there. Same effect there would happen if that's the case. Plus, we went over and I talked about how the brain is, you know, it's connected to the vital part straight from it. Unlike our brain that's a ball and everything's fired to where it needs it, this thing has everything. It's like an engine, and these eyes go right to the brain. The brain, so it feeds right into the brain part that determines the sight. So everything's going right into the brain from this thing. The brain of a great white is just amazing. So both of those things are telling me we're being lectured to again with no proof of anything from the usual suspects when you think about it. I don't know why they have to do that. But Ali had actually sent me a few stories, and one of them was on these fishermen, and they were out doing some fishing. I didn't see in it what they were fishing for, if they were chumming, you know, with some bloody fish, with some fish carcasses, or if they were just doing the little chum bag that'll just leave little pieces coming off of it. Both will attract fish. Both will attract fish, which will attract bigger fish. Thing is, 3 great white sharks showed up. Now, down in the Keys and you're fishing for like the tuna and you catch one, I ended up having the shark grab that. Well, there's probably a bunch of sharks down there. There's probably a sandbar shark that hang out in that area. No big deal, and probably a decent sized shark, but I couldn't do anything with it. I couldn't move the thing. So I'm like, well, what the hell's going on there? Well, you end up with 3 sharks, great whites, and you're not trying to chum them in. I mean, it's just, to me, that's more proof that these things are, the numbers of them are way bigger than they were when they put the protections in there. And the funny thing is how can these are, you know, they're supposed to be the people teaching intelligent people, telling us that the numbers are still endangered. How does a shark that has 10 to 15 children, you know, 10 to 15 pups, and 60% of them, over 60% of them make it to adulthood, to juvenile status, which means they're pretty much safe by that point. How are the numbers down if those numbers are correct? So they're telling us one thing and then they're telling us that the numbers are different. They break my brain. So that's the shark part of the show, and that'll be it for that. Thank you for all the orders from the eBay store on ebay.com. If you go ahead and you put in Sharks Happen, it'll pop up with t-shirts, hats, and pens. All the shirts will have the Sharks Happen logo on it somewhere. The pens will just say Sharks Happen, and then the hats will have the Sharks Happen logo on it also. There's like a Shark Happens socks or something out there. So there can be other things, but there shouldn't be Sharks Happen, because I went ahead and trademarked that one. I trademarked Attempt to Predate. See, both of those are trademarked for a show that supposedly is no good. So, thank you for the orders. That's how you go ahead and find the t-shirts, hats, and pens. There's a huge deal on them, and there will be for the longest time. I don't know when that'll change. So I've been a little busy. I went down to see my father. Went down to Georgia finally. I got a little bit of sun, my favorite thing in the world. No block, nothing. And I got what I call a controlled burn, and we'll get into those with some stories about fishing down in the Keys. So we end up going out fishing, and we went on like the second day, and it was beautiful. It was 85 degrees and sunny. Well, I forgot to I brought long sleeve shirts, knowing that I'd be out in the sun. I'd be wanting to get myself sun, and I'll need to put that shirt on to block the sun. I forgot it. So my arms, because I had a, sleeve shirt, I think I had my Sharks Happen black t-shirt on. And so I had the farmer's tan, but it was the farmer's burn, and it was bad on my arms and on my face and on the upper part of my chest. But that's not the story. The story is we get there. This damn boat, we thought we had this boat all set, and we're dealing with this engine. We can get it to fire when we pour gas into the carburetor, and it'll run, and then it shuts off. So the carburetor's bad on it now. We've changed the impeller on this damn thing. We've gone ahead and done just about everything. This damn little 4-stroke should be brand new by the time we're done with putting on this. He's probably already done it, but putting the new carburetor on the thing, and it will be all set. So without a carburetor and without that engine, we were stuck with just the trolling motor. So it's electric motor. And we decide we're only going to fish what we call the Grand Banks. We have 3 places we fish there. The Grand Banks are along the bank, and we fish along this certain bank, and at certain times it does real well. Then we go over to the Flemish Cap, I call it, and that's going way back across the lake. You're talking maybe a half mile to get back to there, and just call it the Flemish Cap because it's such a long drive, and that's where we couldn't go, and we couldn't go to the dock either. And I gave that thing a nickname too, but we fished those 3 areas mostly, so we were stuck over at the Grand Banks. And the Grand Banks were the slime banks. I mean, you put your damn worm in there and you get this slime that is thinner than hair. I just can't believe this stuff. So I'm like, oh, we can't fish here. So we're sitting there fishing. We're not getting any bites, which is unreal for this time of the year. And I finally get a bite, and I catch the fish, and I pull it up. And this thing is about 11-inch black crappie, which is I think it's the biggest fish I've pulled out of that lake as far as the crappies that we catch. I'm like, well, son of a bitch. Well, I pull it up with my left hand on the pole, which is bad news because I want my right hand on the pole to grab the fish's mouth with my left hand so I can take that hook out. You see, my problem is I can do nothing left-handed. I can't unscrew. If I have to unscrew or screw on a bolt, I'm embarrassed. The only thing I could do with my left hand, I could switch hit when I played baseball and softball. So I could swing left and right-handed, and I could sometimes take left-handed layups in basketball. But then you have golf, which is a left-handed dominated sport, which is probably why I suck at it so bad. This is my guy. I'm not right-handed for nothing. It's because I use it for everything. So now I have the situation where my right hand's gonna, and I almost have my right hand on the shark's shark. Yeah, caught a shark. I almost have my right hand on this crappie's mouth, and I think about it real quick, and I'm like, oh, and I'm standing up at the time too. So I'm standing up, and I'm 6'1", and the shark's about chest high with me. So the shark's about 4 feet off the ground, which is about 2.5 feet above the bench there. I have never lost a fish ever once I've gotten into the boat. That day that I caught the fish, and I told you the story, I borrowed my neighbor's boat, or rowboat, and I dipped that damn bucket and it filled up too much, and then I'm looking up at the other side of the boat and almost sunk her boat. I didn't lose that fish. But and the explanation is so stupid because I rigged everything the day before. Should have been all set to go, but when I was rigging, I use a improved cinch knot. My dad tells me use a uni knot, and I don't want to use the uni knot because I got to learn the knot. And I know it's an easy knot, but I don't want to learn the knot. So I use my simplified cinch knot, but I need a good tag on that son of a bitch, just over an 1/8 inch usually. Well, I cut one too close, and this ends up being that line. So when I switch to pole, put the pole in my right hand, go to grab the fish's mouth with my left hand, the fish drops, it bounces once, and flips into the water. The fuck? It left my hook on the bench for me, so I didn't lose my hook. But I look at my line, and sure enough, you have that squirrely that it just came undone because it didn't have a tag. So I lost the first fish I've ever had. I've ever had in a boat, and then didn't end up with it. I didn't toss back. This thing was a nice fish, gone. My dad ended up catching 2 fish the rest of the day. We're out there 6 hours. These fish were not active at all. I'm like, where the hell are these things? So we fish. And I'm sitting there, and like I said, it's getting hot and everything. Well, my glasses are on my face, and I think about it, and these are my Ray-Bans. This is my go-to pair of Ray-Bans. I have 2 pairs. I have my Ray-Bans, and I have my other Ray-Bans that are like backup. Now, we'll back up to just before my dad moved to the Keys. He had a little get-together where we all got on his boat, and he took us all down to the downriver, and we went to Sandbaggers, I think it's called, or something down there. A nice restaurant down there on the water. We pulled up, we went in there, we came back. Now I had these Ray-Bans that we had a shop, and we bought this purple delivery van, and inside the van there was this pair of Ray-Bans, and I ended up with them. So we get the boat back, and this is over in Harrison Township here, and I'm grabbing the boat and I'm pulling the boat in, and my head's hanging over and my glasses fall off my head into the water. Now this is not salt water. I'm not worried about fish. It's not clean water. It's a marina, and I'm sitting there and I'm contemplating jumping in the water after these glasses for about probably 10 seconds, and then I decide they're gone. So I lost my first pair of glasses there. Well, I take my glasses and I put them up on top of my head. Well, I did this the day before when we were sitting around the table talking, me, my dad, and his wife, and they fell off the back of my head. Well, sure as shit. I feel them falling, and they fall. I turn and look, and they do the same bounce off the same place as the fish, and they're gone. And this is dark water, and it's got gators in there. Those are gone. It's only 5 or 6 feet of water, but those are gone. So, lost a pair of sunglasses. It was an expensive fishing trip. So that's what happened to me on this fishing trip when I went. Had a good time, golfed badly. Like I said, dominant arm. And this was my maybe I switched to left, right-handed. So that's the update on the show. Thank you for watching. I hope you join me in the next show, which I promise it ain't going to be that long again. You know, if you go into that water, remember, you are much more afraid of those sharks than they are of you. Alan Jackson's test for blurriness.